So I'm standing on the town square in Osceola, Missouri, and behind me you can see the St. Clair County Courthouse, but in front of me is the old historic commercial hotel, where I happen to be staying tonight, and I want to show it to you. Look at this. So one of the most famous or infamous people that stayed here in this hotel in the 1800s was the outlaw Jesse James. Now you could look at him as a hero or as a villain, just depending on what side of history you look at. But regardless, he's a famous person of the Old West. But they know he stayed in this hotel, and they actually know what room he requested whenever he would stay here, and it's this one. The top left, these two rooms, is the Jesse James suite. He always requested that room. And at the time, there was a tree that was on the side of this hotel right here. And he would tie his horse to that tree. And he had a $5,000 reward on his head, dead or alive. So he was aware that people were after him for that reward. So he would be able to look out these windows at the street to see who was coming and going. If he sensed danger, he could climb out the window onto the balcony, into the tree, shimmy down the tree to his horse, and make an escape. So, Jesse James stayed in this hotel. So I'm standing in the doorway of the old commercial hotel on the exact spot in that old photograph that Frank James was standing. That's Jesse James's brother. They were members of the same gang with Cole Younger, who was standing next to Frank in the photograph right here. I'm going to step on over to where Cole was standing in the same exact spot. They were members of the James Younger gang. They robbed trains and they robbed banks. And Jesse was killed, and Cole Younger was arrested and served time. And he served his sentence and he got out. And then he worked for the Wild West show. And Frank James had all his charges dropped. And in the old photograph, they were staying here for working with the Wild West show, and the photograph was taken. They were not wanted men anymore at that time. Cole served his time. Frank had his charges dropped, so they were free men. But that's when they were staying in the hotel, that old picture. And looking out at the town square from this porch, you can get an idea of what Osceola looks like. Well, now that we've looked at the outside, let's go inside. When you walk into this hotel, the first thing you see is a stairway going to the second floor. And there's a banister rail on the stairway that's original to the hotel. So there's no telling how many hands have touched this banister rail since 1868 when this hotel opened. Back in the old days, to check into the hotel, you would go down this hallway next to the stairs, and you would go to this spot right here. There used to be a desk here for checking guests in. And then this area here, this great room, is a parlor. It was a reception room, or room that was used for guests to gather and socialize and relax. The room across the hallway from the parlor was known as the drum room, and they called it that because boats would come down the river and dock behind the hotel, and they had drums of goods that could be purchased by residents of the town. They would bring them and set them up in that room, and you could say they were drumming up business. The drum room. On this wall are photographs of some of the notable people that stayed here. President Harry Truman. He stayed here at least 3 times. Tom Mix was a Western actor who played in a lot of movies. He was also a pallbearer for John Wayne at his funeral. Frank James. Carolyn Grimes, she's the little girl in this picture. She played in this movie, It's a Wonderful Life. She didn't stay at this hotel, but she lived nearby for a time, and she would eat in the cafe at the hotel a lot. Santa Claus. And Sally Rand, she was a burlesque dancer and actress. She is notable for one time being arrested twice in the same day at the Chicago World's Fair for indecent exposure. Jesse James and the Younger family, who were part of the James Younger gang. There's a few other original pieces of the hotel right here, and these came from the cafe that was downstairs. It was the front and back sides of a sign that were worn by someone that walked around town, like the person in this picture, advertising what the cafe was serving that day. And these signs is a special fish dinner for 50 cents, I guess, and then a plate lunch for 35 cents. And they would ring this bell, which is the original bell of this cafe. And when they walked around town ringing this bell, it let the residents know that the food in the cafe was ready. All the guest rooms of this hotel are theme-based, and they're all decorated according to one of the famous people that stayed here. Going down the first floor hallway, you can see the stairway that went down to where the cafe used to be. And you continue this direction, and you get to one of the theme rooms of Tom Mix. There's the Tom Mix room. Someone's renting the Tom Mix room, so I can't go in there. So I'm going to go back down the hall and show you the room I'm staying in, which is the Sally Rand room. Okay, let's go upstairs to see what's on the second floor. This is the Jesse James suite, the room that he always requested when he stayed in this hotel. I'm going to show it to you now. This was his view. see who was coming and going. Another feature of this hotel is this original piece, and this is a fire escape. It was attached to the wall. In a case of fire, they could open the window and throw this rope out and climb down to safety. On the second floor are more original pieces. This piece of furniture, a buffet, and also these two lights, there and there. These were actually gas light fixtures that were converted to electricity. Before they had toilets, the guests of this hotel would use chamber pots. And each morning, they would put their chamber pot outside the door, and someone would come to pick it up, empty the contents, clean the pot, and bring it back. There were 2 suites in this hotel that had bathtubs. This corner room where Jesse James used to stay, and one at the opposite corner of the building. Well, in these suites, they had bathtubs like this. And someone would bring up hot water in buckets each evening, and they would fill the tubs up so they could take a bath. And that's how they did it. If you're wondering if this hotel is haunted, yes, allegedly. There was a woman who arrived in Osceola in the mid-1880s, and she worked at this hotel. She was a caretaker or maid. And she worked here for years, and she died in 1913 of suspected lung disease. And she died in this room. Now, over the years, there's been a lot of paranormal activity reported at this hotel. And one of the most common sightings is of a woman walking up and down the halls of both floors wearing dark clothes and a bonnet, and she has sunken in eyes. Now, the room I'm in right now is called the Quiet Room. It's the room where Margaret Ann died. And they say that this room is haunted. So that's for you to decide, believe it or not.